From its origins as a darker take on the superhero genre, followed up by an amazing animated series, to the rather underwhelming movie adaptation that failed to capture the anti-hero's mystique, Todd McFarlane's Spawn has had a tough time getting the big screen treatment it deserves, but a recent announcement gave us all hope for the long-awaited reboot, because McFarlane just revealed that the film's gonna be a big-budget affair. That's a far cry from statements he made last year. Todd's been given the runaround by Hollywood, and the disaster of the original film starring Michael Jai White left a bad taste in his mouth. Previously, he said that he expects his Spawn reboot film to be a low-budget adaptation. But something tells me that he was just trying not to get his own hopes up. Because despite being one of the most iconic superheroes of all time, Spawn's never gotten the same level of respect as, say, Batman or Spider-Man. So I can definitely understand why McFarlane assumed that a low budget was all he was ever gonna get. But he's changed his tune recently, stating that Spawn could actually get a bigger budget than he'd hoped. And that's all thanks to the current trajectory of the genre. You see, superhero movies have gotten more mature, and that means studios are willing to take bigger risks. I think we have the MCU to thank for all of this, because the studio's been churning out crowd-pleasing blockbusters for nearly 2 decades now, and audiences are finally ready for something new. Mature superhero films aren't new by any means, but they had a hard time getting approved and made. Fortunately, it seems like the tide is finally shifting. Darker takes on the superhero genre are everywhere now, from The Boys to Invincible, not to mention the success that Joker and the Batman have seen at the box office. Major studios are getting comfortable with the idea of a dark character like Spawn. But just in case it's been a while, let's refresh our memories real quick. Spawn is a superhero like no other. In his past life, he was known as Albert Simmons, and he happened to work as an assassin for the CIA. Working for the CIA is not a very stable gig. Simmons gets double-crossed and left for dead by his superiors. Considering his line of work, it's no surprise that he ends up in hell. Once there, he tries to strike a deal with one of the rulers of hell, Malebolgia. He asks to be sent back to the land of the living, and Malebolgia accepts. But there's a catch. Simmons doesn't return as a human being. Instead, he returns as a Hellspawn. In other words, a twisted entity with crazy powers. It turns out that Malebolgia tricked the poor Simmons and expects him to lead Hell's armies. The rest of the story involves Simmons struggling to come to terms with his new life, and striving to make up for the sins he committed in the past. That's just about the most complex, compelling superhero origin story that I can think of. You can imagine how terrible a film adaptation would be if it didn't get the right funding. Now, McFarlane's not saying that he expects an Avengers-level budget for the reboot, but he's not setting his expectations quite as low as he used to. I actually feel for the guy, cause he has a good reason for being pessimistic. Just look at how things fared the first time he tried to make a Spawn movie. The 1997 film left a lot to be desired. To be fair, it might have been too ahead of its time. You've got to understand, superheroes were still supposed to be campy and ridiculous in the 90s. The 2 awful Batman films we got in that decade proved that well enough. So Spawn's darkness was gonna be a tough sell from the get-go. To make matters worse, the studio funding the project New Line Cinema was an absolute nightmare to work with. They wanted McFarlane to keep things PG-13, which is weird, cause R-rated violence is kinda Spawn's whole deal. It's almost like the studio didn't know a single thing about the source material. In the end, over 200 different edits of the movie had to be made, none of which turned out all that great. Eventually, McFarlane was able to release an R-rated director's cut with about 45 minutes of extra content. And even though it wasn't perfect, it was way better than the original release. There's a feeling this time around that McFarlane's gonna be more demanding. He's already gone through a lot of trouble with the first film. And if a studio wants him to reboot the franchise, they're gonna have to cough up a bigger budget and give him more creative control. McFarlane's plans are pretty realistic, so he's hoping to get a mid-range blockbuster budget, something that help him get some A-list talent on board. And from the looks of things, there are some big-name stars who've shown an interest, like Jamie Foxx, who's been obsessed with playing the anti-hero on the big screen. Yep, you heard that right, and this isn't exactly recent news either. Fox first indicated that he wanted the role back in 2018, which was when the news regarding a potential Spawn reboot first came to light. I can't think of a better actor for the part. Sure, there are other great performers out there, but Jamie Foxx just seems like the perfect fit. What's more, he hasn't let the years of delays dim his excitement. Instead, he seems just as keen on the role as ever. In fact, McFarlane's spoken out about how committed Fox is. Apparently, Jamie still calls Todd once in a while to ask him if there's any progress. Talk about a passion for the role. And I can totally see why Jamie would want the part so badly. After all, the character of Albert Simmons is groundbreaking for a bunch of reasons. Firstly, there's the fact that he's one of the most complex superheroes we've ever gotten. But perhaps less obviously, he's also unique for being a black superhero whose race doesn't get used as a gimmick. Don't get me wrong, I love Black Panther, Luke Cage, and the countless other black superheroes we've seen. But with Spawn, his blackness is just a matter of fact. It's handled subtly, without becoming his defining characteristic. Not many black heroes get to enjoy such a tasteful depiction. And I don't blame Jamie Foxx for wanting to get his hands on this once-in-a-lifetime part. Now, if you think that's cool, just wait till you hear who's writing the movie. McFarlane's gotten some of the biggest screenwriters in the business to pen the script. Like, I'm talking major legends of the superhero genre. Scott Silverman's one of the writers confirmed to be working on the screenplay. In case you didn't know, he's the guy that co-wrote Joker back in 2019. So it's safe to say that he's the right fit for a character like Spawn. And that's not all. Malcolm Spellman's gonna be in the writing crew right alongside Silverman. He was the showrunner for The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I'd imagine he'd bring some of the more blockbustery aspects that the film needs in order to succeed. Cause at the end of the day, a movie has to be a hit. Otherwise, there'll be no hope for the future. And McFarlane's got big plans as far as the future of Spawn is concerned. The madman's planning a whole cinematic universe. Or maybe I should call him a mad genius. Because you have to admit, the work he's done with Spawn is impressive to say the least. And he wants to make sure that he does things properly with the reboot. Launching a cinematic universe is ambitious for sure, but it's not like Todd's lacking the cast of characters necessary to make it work. The guy's made over 300 characters for his Image comics. And with every other major studio and their mother making a cinematic universe these days, I really don't see why McFarlane shouldn't get to throw his own hat into the ring. Especially considering how hard he's worked to get to where he is right now. So there you have it, folks. That's all you need to know about the crazy updates surrounding the upcoming Spawn reboot.